Good morning. It's Thursday. Thanks once again for joining me on the conversation on voluntary virtues with Kelly Diamond. You can catch me every Thursday at 6:30 a.m. Pacific time, 9:30 Eastern time. You can also catch me every Monday. My written word rolls out on globalwealthprotection.com. So, 3 times a year, the patriotic tom-toms come out and we have to throw ticker tapes and have news conferences and dedicated programming and all sorts of wonderful things. Our economy stops, right? Everything just stops except for retail. They never stop. God bless them. And all for Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and 4th of July. Those days, and every single time, without fail. And it's like Groundhog Day. It really is. I should call them Groundhog Day collectively because every year, every time, those 3 days, all this thank the troops shit rolls out. And I'm saying this because just this last Tuesday completely caught me by surprise. Actually, I didn't even realize it was coming because I thought it was on a Monday. It was Veterans Day. And so, all the thank the troops shit was rolling out. And of course, it's like freaking bait. I can't not say something, right? So I'm not about thanking the troops. Okay. I'm no more about thanking the troops for doing something they didn't do than I am about blaming governments for things they don't do. I mean, I'll be the first one to play 3 degrees of separation from any given social ill to the government. But the day it doesn't end up leading to them is the day I say, okay, it wasn't them. I'm willing to admit that. Okay. But I'm also willing to not give credit where credit isn't due and say that the troops fought for my freedoms when that's not what they did. That might have been their intention. I don't deny that a lot of them went in with star-spangled eyes, saying, oh, I'm going to fight for freedom. I'm going to die in a blaze of glory, and I'm going to die for my country, and I'm going to fight for my country, and, I'm going to do the honorable thing. Okay. I mean, if that's what you believe doing when you went in, that's okay. I mean, I don't deny it. I think it was genuine. I do. But at some point, you realize that's not what it's about. People have told you that's not what it's about. The news has all but spelled it for you. I mean, even the mainstream media, you can see through that shit. But that there's so much compelling and there's such a preponderance of arguments as to why you shouldn't be going to war and why war is the most pointless thing in the world and that the last thing it does is fight for your freedom. Okay? That the evidence is so profound and that in the face of all that, onlookers and soldiers alike turn a blind eye to it. Even the ones who start to acknowledge that perhaps it might be a farce are the ones who say, well, don't blame the troops. It's not their fault they were lied to. No, I don't blame the troops for being lied to. Okay, that's fraud for all intents and purposes. They were defrauded. But if I was defrauded into doing something wrong, I wouldn't keep doing the wrong thing, right? I mean, if somebody told me, go do this wrong thing, and you would be saving countless lives, and so I think I'm doing the right thing, right, by doing that. And then I find out later that I'm not doing any such thing. I'm not doing anything noble by doing what I'm doing. I would certainly stop doing the wrong thing. Like that's the first thing I would stop. I mean, anyway, but they keep going and they keep following orders. And you have to wonder, how has every horrible hegemon, how has every horrible despot and tyrant pulled off the magnitude of shit that they have done in the past? I mean, how did Stalin pull off what he did? How did Pol Pot pull off what he did? How did Hitler pull off what he did? Well, I'll tell you what, they didn't do it by themselves. Inventors pull shit off by themselves. Okay? Over a long period of time, they finally come up after 500 mistakes. The 501st turns out to be a great innovation that helps humanity and affects humanity in some way. The despots don't do anything. They just take all the accolades and the glory while it's going down. But it's their troops. It's their troops. I mean, that pull it off. Here's how we can figure that out. Here's the logic that I'm using, okay? Have you ever heard of jury nullification? Jury nullification is basically when a jury finds that even though the person might have broken the law itself is unjust, so it wouldn't be just to punish a person for this. So they nullify. I think they say we're going to nullify one. And it ultimately gets the case dismissed. The person gets off. I mean, the person gets off. They certainly don't get away with anything particularly bad. It would be like nullifying if somebody was caught in possession of marijuana. Okay. Hasn't hurt anybody. Is a harmless soul otherwise. And the jury says, we're not punishing this person. We're not taking tax dollars and punishing this person for simply possessing marijuana. That doesn't make any sense. You know, and the jury, 12 of this man's peers say no, right? And this person gets off. If they were compliant, if they said, I'm going to follow the orders that I was given by the prosecutor, and I'm going to adjudicate based on whether or not he broke the law only, not whether or not it's just that this person be punished for a law that's unjust, right? I'm not going to base it on justice. I'm going to base it on whether or not they can factually prove that he broke the law. And then I'm going to adjudicate accordingly. This mass cooperation in enforcement, okay, is what brings down people who are otherwise innocent. Right. It wasn't just the prosecutor by himself. It wasn't just the judge by himself. It was the 12 compliant people who said, rather than adjudicate along just lines, I'm going to adjudicate on legal lines. So nullification says, I'm going to lines and only adjudicate on just lines. Is the law itself just? Right? And then I'll go from there. So everything is predicated on justice as opposed to legality. Now imagine if cop nullified and said, I'm not arresting people for possession. I got better shit to do with my time. Someone somewhere out there might be getting raped, might be getting beaten. A child might be getting beaten or abducted. Somebody might be breaking into a house right now. That's where we should be. We should be where people are doing bad things and stopping bad things. Right? I'm giving a shit ton of credit here to an entity that has the IQ of my Post-its, so I can't, I'm not going to bank on that. But in a perfect world, cops would nullify. Without the mass enforcement, the law is useless. Right? I mean, I think that's proven. Hell, even with enforcement, the law is kind of useless. People still break it. People still die. People get murdered. People get stolen from all the time. This happens. So, I mean, the law is useless either way. But what we're not doing is we're not adding to the population of the highest incarceration rate in the world, which is the U.S. prison system. Okay. What if the military nullified? Would you still have American imperialism? I see all these signs of military people. I don't know if they're necessarily from the military. I assume they are. I take them at their word. And they have these signs saying, "I'm not fighting." This is don't send me to war again. What do you mean, don't send me? don't go. Why aren't we holding individuals accountable for their actions? I hold every juror accountable on these possession cases. I hold them accountable. And I say each and every one of you are responsible for adding to the numbers, these outrageous numbers of this incarceration rate that we have, and destroying innocent lives over possession. I mean, it's the most nonviolent act in the world is to possess something. To simply hold it in your possession and do nothing with it, just to have it. It would literally be like saying, you might as well criminalize their existence, and then criminalize the existence of certain things. And then that they would coexist is a compounded crime, of indescribable felonious intent. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can't. I hold jurors individually accountable for not nullifying. I hold cops individually accountable for being extortion artists and road pirates. I hold the troops individually responsible for not saying no, especially when they do know it's a lie. Okay? When you know it's a lie, and you're still saying, I'll follow orders anyway. That's the good Nazi I'm talking about. Because there is no war that fought for our freedoms. Not one. Not a single one. And certainly not one that was necessary for us to fight, as the United States anyway. Not one. And of course, when I say this, and I say it 3 times a year at least, the first words. What about the American Revolution? What about World War II? If it weren't for World War II and U.S. involvement, we'd all be speaking German. We'd all be speaking German? Those were the stakes? You put hundreds of thousands of lives on the line? We lost hundreds of thousands of America's prime beef because you didn't want to speak Deutsch? Well, fuck all. Let me tell you something. If somebody said to me, Kelly, here are your choices. You could either A, save hundreds of thousands of lives, spare hundreds of thousands of lives. Okay. Or we can expend those lives so that you don't have to speak German. If you save those lives, you will have to speak a different language. You might have to speak German. You might have to speak German. But those lives would not be taken. However, we can also spend those lives on preserving your American English. I don't even know if I would flinch. If the only consequence hanging in the balance was me speaking German, then I'll gladly speak German. As if I'd know the difference. 1941, I was born in 77. I was born into whatever language my parents were going to rear me with. What the fuck do I care if it's German? I understand. That's not the only thing writing right, on World War II. If it were, I'd literally buy the biggest hand possible, construct it out of freaking latex, and just start slapping bitches. I don't know what to do. But of course, we have to believe that Hitler has this superpower, right, to conquer Russia in the wintertime. We also have to suppose this. But had it not been for the United States, not only would we be speaking German, we'd be speaking German because Hitler has a superpower that allows him to defeat Russia in the wintertime. And then after defeating Russia in the wintertime, still managing to have enough people left to fly over the Pacific, over the Atlantic Ocean, to start conquering the United States. Okay. Taking his weary ass leftover military, bringing it over the Atlantic Ocean to fresh troops who haven't even picked up a gun yet, who haven't even wrinkled their fucking uniforms, haven't so much as expended a single calorie on a jumping jack, sitting there waiting for these tired ass Germans to show up and fucking shoot them down at the fucking shore. I mean, I just don't understand how they would have ever conquered the United States. To me, it's just. But there are people who believe it. There are people who believe this. And I was like, really? First of all, the United States didn't give two tits shits about Jews getting cooked in ovens. We care about Jews getting cooked in ovens. Okay? This generation cares about Jews getting cooked in ovens. 1941 America, 1939 America didn't give two tits shits about Jews getting cooked in ovens. 1939 Germany didn't care about Jews getting cooked in ovens. It had nothing to do with Jews getting cooked in ovens. It's an afterthought. I'm not saying it sucked. It didn't suck. It does suck. That's why I said this generation cares about Jews getting cooked in ovens. America did not care what was happening to Jews. If America cared about what was happening to Jews, it wouldn't have interned Japanese people in return. It wouldn't have interned Germans. But we interned Germans and we interned Japanese here in the United States. So internment camps were the thing, okay? that was the political move du jour. Canada had internment camps, for God's sakes. I mean, that's like saying, it's like condemning slavery. Yeah, this generation condemns slavery. But when slavery was going down, it was the thing. It wasn't just the United States. Several countries had slaves. I'm not saying it's right. Okay, this has nothing to do with right and wrong. And I know this is the first thing that people say. Oh, so you're saying it's okay then? No, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying that wasn't the issue. Jews getting cooked in ovens was not the issue. That wasn't why we went. We went because we needed a fucking war because our economy sucked ass. We went because FDR was failing miserably and he needed a fucking shiny distraction, and dying people in the name of freedom is as good as any. I mean, who attacks Germany after Japan attacks you from the other side? That makes no fucking sense. More importantly, Japan didn't want to attack. Japan pled with FDR to lift the blockades, but he wouldn't do it. He knew that blockades and sanctions were an act of war, something that modern right tends to forget. It's an act of war, and that's what happened. Okay. So our troops didn't need to go. One man needed to just grow up and abandon his Keynesian bullshit, and we would have been fine. But instead, FDR, had to flex his nuts and get out there and start fighting. That's what we had to do for him. Certainly not for us. Certainly not for us. Every time soldiers leave our soil, we lose freedom. A freedom loses its wings. Every time a soldier goes off to war, a freedom loses its wings. That's literally the formula for how we just fall away from liberty. Now, then they say, so the same is true. That's why I say the Civil War is not about slavery. Yes, slavery is wrong. To this generation, okay, slavery is wrong. To that generation, It was a lifestyle. It was as commonplace as not having plumbing. And this generation also condemns not having plumbing, but it has since fixed. It's since been fixed, but it wasn't fixed because of a civil war. The Civil War wasn't necessary because it had nothing to do with slavery. It had to do with economics. As does every war have to do with economics. The Revolutionary War. That certainly had to have been necessary. Really? I look around at all the other British Commonwealths and I'm wondering what the fuck. Because New Zealand has a more economic freedom, has more respect for civil liberties. Now, I understand there are Kiwis out there who would beg to differ, but if you lived here, you know that there's an egregious difference between what you're experiencing over there in New Zealand versus what we've got going on here in the United States. But they've been ranked as having more economic freedom than the United States. They've been ranked as having more more regard for civil liberties than the United States. Australia is more economically free. Canada is more economically free. Those are three large British Commonwealths who never had a revolutionary war to separate themselves from England's tit and still manages to be freer than the United States. Riddle me that then. 235 plus years later, what the fuck was the Revolutionary War for? Other than an excuse to institute a whiskey tax and lead us down this fucking path of bullshit. We have a constitution. Fuck! I have toilet paper too. Congratulations. Instead of calling it fucking constitution, we should call it fucking Charmin. Fought for my freedoms. The sad part is that I would, if I had to face the ghost of a revolutionary soldier who actually believed they were fighting for the emancipation from England, that they were finally going to be free, and then show him this shit. Our lovely police state, spying ass government, taxes up the ass. Sorry, bro. You didn't die for freedoms. You just postponed the inevitable. Or you helped set this shit on course and didn't even know it. This is fucking tragic. And honestly, we went from black people being slaves to everyone being slaves. So nobody was really emancipated from slavery. No one was really let off the plantation. The plantation just became the entire United States. And our masters went from being private masters to government masters, which is basically what Hitler did. Everybody says, well, Hitler abolished unions. Oh, no, he abolished private unions. He nationalized the unions, the way we nationalize slavery here. It looks freer because it's so spread out and because it's centralized in some far off place in a government building. 3 times a year, this fucking debate comes up. And 3 times a year, I walk away being told that I'm a fucking Nazi sympathizer, that I'm a Holocaust denier, that, I hate freedom. If you don't like it, leave. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, and yet no one wants to even think about questioning the over-romanticized American history and how over-romanticized people in government uniforms are. We've turned it into a fairy tale. Would it make sense? Imagine if we apply the same fucking dementia potion to 9/11, we're going to go from 3,000 people died, approximately 3,000 people died in the Twin Towers. That's what we're hearing today. 50 years hence, it's going to be 300,000 people died in a fiery crash of planes and helicopters. I mean, all of a sudden that story is not even going to be recognizable. I'll tell you, I'll bet anything, because we over romanticize death so much here, and destruction and war and nationalism and fighting for freedom and the idea of fighting in general, that I'll bet you in 100 years you won't even recognize the 9/11 story. If we were to rise out of our graves in 100 years and listen to what they're teaching about 9/11, fuck all if you're going to recognize it as the event that, as the event that you remember today. I don't believe it's necessary to glorify, to even so much as thank somebody for doing something they didn't do. They did not fight for my freedom, and therefore they do not deserve thanks for it. That would be like me thanking you for holding the door open for me this morning when I know you didn't do it. You don't get thanks for doing things you don't do. And you don't get blamed for things you don't do either. But going off to a foreign land to blindly kill people you're told are bad, when you have no proof that they are, that's not heroism. That's not heroism. Heroism happens all the time by private individuals without a government badge or a government uniform or a card or a fucking AK-47 marching around with $75,000 worth of fucking military gear up and down the streets of innocent people. No, that's not it. That's not heroism. Heroism is when you see a need and you fill a need. It might make you a little uncomfortable, but in the end you feel good about it. You don't come back traumatized and fucked up and physically half the person you were when you left. That's not heroism. Paying the ultimate sacrifice, giving your life so that a person can then sit on a jury and go to jail and be put in a cage and have their lives destroyed over possession. And then these troops have the audacity to shake their heads saying, what the fuck did I fight for then? Well, you did exactly what the juror did. You did what you were told. And people suffered. At some point, these individuals have to be held accountable, not glorified, not lauded, not praised, not thanked. Held accountable. These are the facts of this war. This is what you went to fight for. I'm going to break this news to you. They're about to sign you up for another tour. Are you going to still go and fight for it? Or will you be willing to sit in a jail peacefully? Because I'd rather pay for you to sit in a jail. If my tax dollars are going to fight for anything, I'd rather pay for your shit to sit in jail in civil disobedience and in protest of a war, not killing somebody. If that were the one thing somebody said, your tax dollars are going to go towards something, it can either fund a war or it can fund the jails that are going to hold the people who are who are conscientiously objecting. Well, fuck. If my money has to be taken from me and it has to be spent, spend it on peace. Spend it on the people who said they won't go kill people. Absolutely. I have no problem with that. I've saved somebody's conscience. I'd feel better. At least somebody could say your tax dollars were at work today. Yes, they were. They housed, they clothed, they provided books and a gym and a television to a person who said, I am not going to go fight today. I choose peace. I want to bring that person some home comforts. I'd like to bring them some pillows, blankets, casserole, whatever it takes. Thank you. Thank you for your service, for not doing anything. Thank you. Every time somebody, an agent of the state, says they're not going to do something, something good comes out of that. Our best politicians are remembered for what they didn't do, not what they did. So anytime something good comes out of the government, it's because they didn't do something, not because they did something. And that goes for every single agent of the state. Anyway, I'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to my rant. Bye.